$1,200 a month. That's what some retirees are actually living on. Not in their kid's basement, not in a studio the size of a parking space. Real homes, real towns, real lives you've never heard of because you weren't supposed to. You've been sold this idea that retirement means a fat savings account, a condo in Florida, and an overpriced community where they charge you $400 a month to live near a golf course you'll use twice. But what if that's a lie? What if the real loopholes are small towns nobody's talking about where rent is $575, your social security isn't taxed, and the government literally forgot to raise the prices? Today we're exposing 12 hidden towns where your social security check still means security. One of them is where Aretha Franklin and the Rolling Stones recorded some of the greatest music in history, and rent is under $700. Another sits on volcanic hot springs where a spa day costs less than your lunch, and one is so quiet, the sheriff's office closes early on Fridays because there's literally nothing happening. Think you know the cheapest places to retire? You don't. Because the best ones don't make brochures. They don't show up on CNBC. They're the kind of towns that feel like cheat codes, and most financial advisors will never mention them because there's nothing in it for them. Hit subscribe because missing this list might be the most expensive free mistake you ever make. Let's break it down. Number 12. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Truth or Consequences is one of the only towns in America that changed its name to win a radio contest. In 1950, the game show offered to broadcast from whatever town renamed itself after the show. This place said yes. And somehow that's still not the weirdest thing about retiring here on $1,200 a month. Locals call it T or C. Average rent runs $650 to $750. Cost of living sits roughly 22% below the national average. New Mexico doesn't tax Social Security income. The state also offers low-income property tax rebates that make your dollars stretch like they're training for a marathon. But the real cheat code? This town sits on a network of natural geothermal hot springs. You can soak in a mineral bath for about $10. That's cheaper than a Chipotle bowl and infinitely better for your joints. While people in Phoenix are paying $200 for a spa day, you're floating in volcanic water for the price of a sandwich. The trade-off? Summer here isn't vacation hot. It's not poolside hot. It's your flip-flops have chemically bonded to the sidewalk hot. The kind of heat where you reconsider every life decision by noon and start bargaining with the sun like it owes you money. You will see a mirage and seriously consider driving toward it. And the wind? It doesn't cool you down. It sandblasts you. It's like nature hired a pressure washer and pointed it at your face. You don't tan here. You cure like beef jerky. Picture this. Morning light hits the desert hills. You walk 3 blocks to a hot spring, ease in, and your back stops hurting for the first time in a decade. Total expenses for the day? About $10 and some gratitude. Would you retire in a town named after a game show if it meant hot springs and no state tax? Drop it in the comments. And if that sounds odd, wait till the next place where some of the greatest music in history was recorded and nobody's figured out how cheap it is. Number 11. Florence, Alabama. There's a town on the Tennessee River where Aretha Franklin recorded some of her most iconic songs, where the Rolling Stones came to lay down tracks, where Etta James, Wilson Pickett, and Percy Sledge all walked into tiny studios and walked out with music that changed the world. And somehow, rent here is under $700 a month. Welcome to Florence, Alabama, the town that shaped American music and then just quietly kept being affordable while nobody was looking. Florence sits in the Shoals region of northwest Alabama with a population around 41,000. Median home price sits around $174,000. Cost of living runs about 12% below the national average. And here's where it gets good for retirees. Alabama doesn't tax Social Security, doesn't tax most retirement income for seniors over 65. And if you're 65 or older, you're exempt from state property taxes entirely. Let that sink in. No Social Security tax, no property tax. Your $1,200 a month just became a lot more powerful. Florence isn't some forgotten town either. It's got the Frank Lloyd Wright Rosenbaum House, the only Wright-designed building in Alabama. The Florence Indian Mound is one of the largest in the Tennessee Valley. Downtown has restaurants, local shops, live music venues, and a walkable riverfront. The University of North Alabama is here, which means cultural events, a performing arts scene, and an energy that keeps the town from feeling like it's frozen in time. Healthcare access is solid with North Alabama Medical Medical Center. And Huntsville, home to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center and some of the best hospitals in the state, is about a 75-minute drive. The trade-off? Alabama summers are humid enough to make breathing feel like a cardio workout. You step outside and the air hugs you. Not a nice hug. The kind of hug from a relative you don't remember at a family reunion. Your glasses fog. Your shirt surrenders. You develop a personal relationship with your ceiling fan that borders on emotional. And while Florence has more going on than most towns at this price point, it's still Northwest Alabama. The fanciest date night might be a catfish platter and a sunset, which honestly sounds better than spending $200 on parking and a reservation in a city where the waiter judges your wine order. Picture this. Warm evening on the Tennessee River. Someone's playing guitar at a downtown venue. You walk in, order a drink, and spend less than $15 on a night out in the town that literally built the soundtrack to American soul music. Be honest, town with no social security tax, no property tax over 65, and a music legacy that belongs in a documentary? What's the catch? The catch is humidity. That's it. Let me know if you take that deal. Number 10. Hot Springs, Arkansas. Most spa towns charge you $300 to sit in warm water and pretend you're European. Hot Springs charges you basically nothing because the hot water just comes out of the ground and the federal government runs the whole operation. This is the only town in America located inside a national park. Bathhouse Row is literally managed by the National Park Service. Your tax dollars at work, and for once, you can actually use them. Average rent sits around $650 to $750. Cost of living is roughly 20% below the national average. Arkansas doesn't tax Social Security. Property taxes are among the lowest in the country, and seniors over 65 get additional homestead credits that make owning a home here almost suspiciously affordable. The thermal water flows at 143 degrees from 47 different springs, and you can drink it for free from public fountains on the street. In LA, they'd bottle that and sell it for $14 at a wellness pop-up. Here it comes out of the sidewalk. Healthcare is solid thanks to CHI Vincent Hospital, and the downtown is walkable enough that you don't need a car for most errands. The downside? Arkansas summers are humid, not regular humid, the kind where the air has texture. You step outside and immediately feel like you're wearing a wet sweater made of weather. Your skin doesn't dry, it marinates. And the mosquitoes? They don't bite, they file property claims. You'll meet mosquitoes here that have grandchildren, that have retirement plans. They're not pests, they're tenants, and they were here first. Like this video, if you trade a $200 spa membership for a free volcanic fountain and $650 rent, the math isn't hard, and the next town is even cheaper, and it comes with fossils. Number 9. John Day, Oregon. John Day was named after a fur trapper who got robbed, stripped naked, and nearly starved to death in the 1800s, and somehow he still ended up on the map. That's the energy here. Population hovers around 1,700. Average rent runs $600 to $750. Cost of living sits nearly 25% below the national average. Oregon has no state sales tax, which means everything you buy costs exactly what it says it costs. Revolutionary concept, I know. For seniors on limited income, Oregon offers property tax deferral programs, meaning you can legally postpone your property taxes until you sell your home or die. The state basically says, keep your money now, we'll figure it out later. The town is surrounded by the John Day Fossil Beds National Monument, where you can hike through 40 million years of geological history between breakfast and your afternoon nap. Rural healthcare is surprisingly solid thanks to the Blue Mountain Hospital District. Here's the catch. John Day is quiet, capital Q. Quiet. The fanciest restaurant might serve chicken fried steak and also pump gas. There's no Uber. There's no Lyft. There's barely a concept of ride. If you need a lift, you either know a guy, marry a guy, or become the guy with the truck. The internet is the kind of slow that makes you nostalgic for dial-up, except it's not nostalgia, it's just Tuesday. You'll try to stream a movie, and by the time it buffers, the sequel is out. Ordering something online, it arrives on what feels like a geological timeline, which is fitting because you're literally surrounded by fossils. But the crime rate is so low, the sheriff's office reportedly closes early on Fridays because there's nothing to report. The police blotter probably reads, "Cow looks suspicious, turned out to be normal cow." Would you trade fast Wi-Fi for fossil beds and a sheriff who clocks out at noon? And if John Day feels too remote, the next town has trains, tunnels, and a downtown that's adorable and completely empty. Number 8. Cumberland, Maryland. Cumberland looks like a Civil War documentary set that someone forgot to strike. Trains, tunnels, canal history, and a downtown so charming and so empty, it feels like a movie set where the actors went to lunch and never came back. Population around 19,000. Average rent, $731. Cost of living 27% below the national average. Maryland's tax perks for retirees are sneakily good. Social Security is exempt from state tax. People over 65 get generous property tax credits, and the local hospital system punches way above its weight. Plus, Maryland caps medical rate hikes, which is the kind of consumer protection most states pretend doesn't exist. Cumberland sits on the Great Allegheny Passage, a 150-mile rail trail running to Pittsburgh. There's also the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad with vintage steam train excursions through the mountains. Tourist-level charming without tourist-level prices. The trade-off: don't expect Whole Foods. Cumberland gives you coal history, church suppers, and a Dollar General so prominent it might qualify as a landmark. The Wi-Fi is more of a suggestion than a service. Streaming Netflix here requires the kind of patience usually reserved for saints and DMV visits. And the downtown, while gorgeous, has a pedestrian mall with antique shops and cafes that have 2-star Yelp reviews, written by people who clearly expected Manhattan in the mountains. You didn't move here for the Yelp ratings. You moved here because your porch costs less than someone else's parking spot. Picture this: fog rolling through the hills, coffee on a porch built before you were born, zero debt, zero traffic. The loudest sound is a crow judging your outfit. That's not poverty. That's peace with a mountain view and $400 left over at the end of the month. Subscribe, because if Cumberland can offer mountain views for $731, what exactly are you getting for $2,000 in a city? Think about that. Number 7. Bluefield, West Virginia. Bluefield has a town slogan based entirely on being cold. They call themselves nature's air-conditioned city. When the temperature hits 90 degrees, the Chamber of Commerce hands out free lemonade. That's their actual policy. A town so committed to its weather brand, they made it a civic event. Average rent? About $600. Cost of living is 29% below the national average. Your $1,200 a month covers rent, groceries, utilities, and still leaves enough for a haircut and a hot dog. Maybe even both if you're feeling extravagant. West Virginia has been phasing out Social Security tax for most retirees. Over 20% of the population is already over 65, meaning the town is genuinely built around retirees. Senior centers, community events, affordable dining, and a pace that makes you wonder why you ever thought being busy was a personality trait. Downside? The economy has seen better decades, better centuries arguably. If you need nightlife, you're driving. If you need a restaurant that serves something other than country cooking, you're driving further. If you need a club, you might be driving to a different time zone. Entertainment options include the outdoors, church, and whatever's on at the senior center. Your social calendar will revolve around who's making cobbler this week. And honestly, that cobbler will be the best thing you've eaten all month. So maybe that's not a downside. Maybe that's just living. Picture this: a quiet morning in the mountains. The breeze feels like fall even in June. Cheap coffee, pine air, and nothing on your to-do list except enjoy being alive. In Bluefield, that's not a vacation. That's a Tuesday. Hit the like button if your biggest decision being chicken fried steak or meatloaf sounds like paradise. The next town is out west and nobody saw it coming. Number 6. Pocatello, Idaho. Pocatello isn't on anyone's retirement radar, not in a single major listicle. And that's exactly why it works. While everyone fights over Florida and Arizona, Pocatello is quietly offering some of the best retirement math in the country, and nobody's noticed. Population around 56,000, big enough for real infrastructure, small enough that nobody's in a rush. Average rent hovers $700 to $850. Cost of living roughly 12% below the national average. Idaho has no state tax on Social Security. 0. Your check stays your check. Idaho also offers a grocery tax credit that sends money back to retirees at the end of the year. The state government apparently remembers that seniors buy food. Groundbreaking. Because Idaho State University is here, you get things most affordable towns don't. Decent restaurants, a performing arts center, Portneuf Medical Center serving the whole region, and 31 reservoirs and multiple lakes for fishing. So if your retirement plan involves a rod and a lawn chair, you've got options for the rest of your natural life. Trade-off? Idaho winters are real winters. Not the kind where you wear a slightly thicker jacket and call it cold. The kind where you own a snowblower and refer to it by name. Where you develop a relationship relationship with your space heater that your therapist would have questions about. The wind doesn't blow, it commits assault. It cuts through layers like they personally offended it. And yes, Pocatello is in Idaho, which means politically and culturally it leans in one very specific direction. If that's your thing, you'll fit right in. If it's not, you'll still fit in, because everyone's too cold to argue. But the Portneuf Range runs right along town. You can hike, fish, ski, and mountain bike within 20 minutes of your front door. When you come home to a $750 apartment with no state tax, the cold doesn't sting as bad. Could you handle Idaho winters for year-round fishing and zero tax? The next town built its identity around folk music, and somehow that's also a retirement strategy. Number 5. Mountain View, Arkansas. Welcome to Mountain View, where time forgot to rush, and so did the rent. Buried deep in the Ozark Mountains, this town is known as the folk music capital of the world, which sounds like a tourism gimmick until you walk past your 5th live dulcimer jam session before lunch. Average rent? $575 a month. Let that sink in. Cost of living roughly 27% below the national average. Violent crime at about 1/3 of the national average, meaning your biggest risk is clogging your arteries on fried pie. Arkansas doesn't tax Social Security. Seniors get property tax credits plus a homestead exemption at 65. And because there's live bluegrass on the town square basically every day, you don't even need a streaming subscription. The Ozarks provide. The catch? The Wi-Fi is slower than a mule wearing snowshoes, in a headwind, going uphill. You want sushi? That's adorable. You want Thai food? Try hot sauce on catfish and use your imagination. If you're used to DoorDash and fiber internet, you're going to feel like you time traveled to 1994 and nobody gave you a return ticket. Your idea of a wild Friday night here is bingo that runs late. And by late, I mean 8:45. But you know what Mountain View does have? Silence that doesn't cost $3,000 a month. Music that doesn't require a subscription. And neighbors who bring you pie instead of noise complaints. Picture this: pine trees, crisp air, someone playing fiddle across the street, coffee on the porch swing, no traffic, no noise. A neighbor waves with a pie they baked from scratch. Because they had time. Because they live in Mountain View. And their rent is $575. Would you trade Spotify for live bluegrass if it meant the cheapest rent on this list? Drop it below. Number 4. Valley City, North Dakota. Valley City calls itself the City of Bridges, with 11 of them spanning the Cheyenne River. Cute fact for a welcome sign, but the real bridge here is the one between your Social Security check and actually being able to afford your life. Population around 6,500. Median rent approximately $780. North Dakota doesn't tax Social Security. The state offers a generous homestead credit for qualifying seniors. The Cheyenne River Valley National Scenic Byway runs through the area, meaning your drive to the grocery store looks like a screensaver. Healthcare is anchored by CHI Mercy Health right in town, and North Dakota actually funds senior services properly, instead of treating them like an election year afterthought. The trade-off? North Dakota winters will test your will to live, and then test it again, and then send a follow-up test just to make sure. The kind of cold where you lose feeling in your face between the front door and the car, where the wind has a name, a reputation, and possibly a criminal record. You will own more than one type of shovel. You will develop opinions about insulation, strong opinions, opinions you share at dinner parties. Your car won't start for 3 months and you'll just accept it like it's a lifestyle choice. Half the year is winter and the other half is recovering from winter. Your favorite neighbor? Whoever owns the plow. But for roughly $1,000 a month all in, you get genuine community, stunning river views, and enough left over to take your grandkids to the diner. That's not surviving retirement. That's winning it. Number 3. Hickory, North Carolina. If you've ever sat on a nice couch in America, there's a decent chance it was made near Hickory. This town built its reputation on furniture manufacturing and somehow kept the cost of living low, while the rest of the South gentrified into oblivion. Population around 43,000. Rent runs $800 to $900, higher than others on this list, but with significantly more amenities. Cost of living about 12% below average. North Carolina doesn't tax Social Security. Hickory sits in the Blue Ridge Mountain foothills, an hour from Charlotte, so you get mountain views without mountain isolation. Revitalized downtown with restaurants, breweries, a farmer's market, and Lake Hickory for boating and fishing. Healthcare is the real selling point. Catawba Valley Medical Center is well rated, and Charlotte's world-class facilities are a short drive away. That combo of affordable living plus accessible serious healthcare is incredibly rare. Most towns give you one or the other. Hickory pulled off both. Trade-off? Summers are humid enough to fog your glasses the moment you step outside. You don't walk into the heat, you wade into it. The air has a dress code and it's damp. And the furniture outlets are so tempting you might accidentally furnish 3 houses, a garage, and a vacation home you don't even own yet. You came here to save money and somehow left a store with a sectional sofa and emotional regret. But it's basically Asheville's more affordable cousin who actually invites you to dinner, doesn't charge $18 for toast, and has never once used the word artisanal without being sarcastic about it. Like this video if you want mountains without mountain prices. The next town proves you can find absurdly cheap rent in one of America's most expensive states. Number 2. Corning, New York. Corning is famous for 2 things: glass, and being inexplicably affordable for a town this nice. The Corning Museum of Glass is world-class. The Gaffer District downtown is one of the most walkable main streets in the Northeast. Wine trails, craft breweries, restaurants that would cost triple in any coastal city, and rent averages around $700 in New York State. Let that marinate. Population around 11,000. Cost of living about 15% below the national average, which in New York terms is basically a miracle. The state exempts Social Security from state tax. Seniors qualify for property tax exemptions that make homeownership genuinely manageable. Corning sits in the Finger Lakes region, surrounded by wineries, gorgeous lakes, and rolling farmland that looks like a desktop wallpaper someone forgot to tell you was real. About 19% of the population is over 65. There's a whole community that already figured out this place is a glitch in the system. Trade-off? Upstate winters are long, gray, and the kind of cold that makes you question your relationship with sunlight. January doesn't end. It just gets a sequel called February. The sky turns the color of a spreadsheet and stays that way until April. You'll develop a tan line from your snow boots. Nearest major city is 2 hours in any direction, which means if you want a Target run, you're packing a lunch. And despite the wine trails, this is still a small town. Entertainment options thin out fast once you've been to the museum and every winery within a 30-mile radius. But hey, at least you can afford to be bored. In Manhattan, boredom costs $3,500 a month plus utilities. But picture this, fall morning. You walk 3 blocks to the Gaffer District, coffee from a local cafe, browse a gallery, lunch where the owner knows your name. You spend $30 total. The river catches the afternoon light and you think, how is this my life? Because it can be. For $700 a month and a willingness to own a warm coat. Number 1. Sebring, Florida. You made it to number 1, and it's Florida, but not the Florida you're thinking of. Not Miami, not Naples, not anywhere a condo costs more than a college education. This is Sebring, a small town in South Central Florida, where the cost of living is so low, you'll wonder if there's been an accounting error. Sebring sits in Highlands County, surrounded by lakes instead of coastline. Population around 10,000. Rent hovers $700 to $850. And because this is Florida, there's no state income tax, period. No tax on Social Security, no tax on pensions, no tax on 401k withdrawals. Florida looked at retirees and said, keep your money, we'll get ours from the tourists. Sebring is built around Lake Jackson, giving it a waterfront feel without waterfront prices. Highlands Hammock State Park features old-growth cypress swamps and hiking trails. Healthcare is anchored by Advent Health Sebring, and Florida's retirement infrastructure is so developed that even small towns here offer better senior services than most states provide in their major cities. Trade-off? Inland Florida. No beach. Summer heat is the kind where you run from air-conditioned building to air-conditioned car, like you're being extracted from a war zone. You don't go outside in August. You make brief, strategic appearances between climate-controlled environments. Sweat isn't optional here. It's a personality trait. Hurricane season is a yearly negotiation with the sky where the sky always has leverage. And the nightlife? A Dairy Queen that closes at 9, and on Sundays, it closes at 8. That's not a downside, that's a boundary. The Dairy Queen knows when to quit. We should all be so wise. But here's what $1,200 buys you in Sebring. Lake views, warm winters, 0 state tax on anything, Spanish moss on everything, and the kind of quiet that doesn't feel lonely. It feels earned. Picture this: morning sun through palm trees, coffee on the lanai, a great blue heron at the lake's edge like it's guarding your property. Your phone buzzes. You don't check it. Everything you need is right here. And it costs less than most people's car payment. Like this video because you just discovered that retirement isn't a math problem, it's a geography problem. Subscribe because the next time someone says retirement is impossible without $1 million, send them this video and watch their worldview rearrange in real time. Share it with that friend who's been stressing about money since 2019. They need these numbers. Thanks for watching, stay smart, stay subscribed, and whatever you do, stop paying $2,000 rent to live somewhere you don't even like.